Welcome back. Harvard Business School Association of Nigeria wants policymakers in the country to identify research in the development of Nigeria's industrial parks. To drive home this message, a senior lecturer at the finance unit of Harvard Business School, Professor John Makumba, presented the modified case study of Ethiopia to illustrate how Nigeria can actually actualize the plans effectively. Professor Makumba speaks to Channel's business producer, Temple Ashaju.
So the interesting thing for me about industrial park policy is twofold. One is, how much does the government try and invest, or how much does the government try and influence, or how much does the government try and restrict? And the choices in that depend on the other items in the hand of cards the government holds. So these particularly involve whether a variety of different parks should be coordinated centrally or done at a more distributed kind of local level. And that also influences what should the parks be about. So some nations which are really about maybe low wages have garment processing and things like that. Other nations, say, now in modern China, might have a park that's about biotech. So what's interesting to me is when the policy thinks about what makes sense in terms of the state of the nation and the kind of workforce that's available and the kind of other partners who are available as corporates to be importers and exporters, and then matches its activities around industrial parks realistically around what's already there and what they can do to encourage those businesses going forward. So each African country is really different in terms of the kind of industries that already exist, the kind of energy that's available, the kind of shipping that's available, and logistics. And I'm interested in seeing how federal policies match the kind of industries on the ground and the assets that the nation has as they think of a coordinated policy.
You seem to be very particular about technology as to how it can address a lot of the challenges that Nigerians have. Can you share with us how this can actually address the challenges that Nigeria has around investment, around infrastructure?
So I can talk a little bit about some of the ways in which we think infrastructure finance investing will be changing, because a lot of what's been thought about in infrastructure for decades and years, hundreds of years, is well known around the possibility for repayment, around the contractual structures, things like that, and a lot of sort of hand-wringing around best practices. I think there are three categories of things in the technology space that mean that the next decade could be different than the last 10 decades. One is around the advent of new ways to mean we don't need to build traditional infrastructure. For example, if you think about drones and 3D printing, there's an opportunity to deliver goods and move people around in a way that doesn't mean you have to build giant seaports and giant roadways to carry things on trucks. There might be that kind of technology leapfrog that means that there doesn't need to be the same kind of infrastructure built out here as in Europe and the US. The second is around technologies that change the way we use the infrastructure we have. So an example would be ride pooling. So right now people have to go out and hail those small 10-person passenger vans. I think they're called Dumfus or something like that here. That's really disorganized. It's really time-consuming for people. It really is dangerous out on the street, and there's a lot of traffic involved in it. It's possible now with a feature phone, not even a smartphone, to do a ride-hailing, ride-pooling kind of idea, like an Uber Pool in the US, or like it's being done in India, to match up rides from people in one neighborhood to go on one Dumfu to where they need to go to work. That would take a lot of cars off the road, help a lot of people's lives, and not really interfere with anything else. So there's those kind of technologies. And the third is around the ability to track individual financial investments, whether you use blockchain and uncontrovertible record, or whether you think about cashless transfers as people ride trains or buses, or maybe even the future possible tramway. That the ability to track transactions without using cash, so you know who's doing what and there's not as much risk of leakage and robbery, that will really change the way for infrastructure to get paid for. So I think those three technologies might be a real game changer in how the infrastructure paradox of how to match all this capital with all this need evolves in the future.
And on that note, we draw the curtain on today's edition of the program and, of course, for the week. See you again next week. Enjoy the weekend.